You are on the rant couch where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. I can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Roro, who says, Tool, Fear Inoculum comes out August 30th. So if you think you'll have something interesting to say about it and you can slot listening to it in before September, do that. Oh, buddy, I did. Even though it's like a 90-minute album, I did slot in listening to it before September by about a couple hours. Fear Inoculum, the new album by Tool, I thought it sucked. I was not into it. So, I've said for a very long time that the absolute death knell for a band, the moment when you can tell a band is not good anymore, is when they sound like a generic version of themselves. When they make songs that have all of the same sonic properties as older songs that they made, that have similar structures, similar feel, maybe even similar lyrics, but are just not as good. And it's always difficult because, you have lots of memories tied up in a lot of these songs. You might think, okay, well, I only consider it memorable because I've heard it more times. But no, this album is just plainly more generic. It just has riffs that sound like that other bands could have made them, riffs that don't sound as advanced, as memorable, as instantly sticky as riffs that Tool has had in the past, but put into the same contexts as older riffs. So let's say that there's a riff on a song that would drone on for like 2.5 minutes before, the main song kicks up in an older track. The same thing will happen here, but the riff just isn't as good. There are songs where you're slowly waiting for new sonic elements to be implemented as the track goes on, and each one doesn't add anything. It doesn't add anything new or memorable. It doesn't make the song feel like it's exploding open. It doesn't make you feel like, oh, shit, this is the cool part. There are no cool parts. There are songs that are 15 minutes long on this album, and no part of it is memorable. How does that happen? Why would you bother making a 15-minute song if it isn't building to something? So, when I first heard the title track, the opener, Fear Inoculum, my immediate thought was, this sounds exactly like Triad from their album Lateralis. And just like that song, it kind of has this long kind of vibe, like this deep drumming vibe that's going throughout the track that eventually builds into some more like heavy moments. But again, none of it's as memorable as the heavy parts. And Triad's not even like close to one of my favorite Tool songs. It was just like, this sounds a lot like Lateralis. And then you get to the song Pneuma, which is track 2, and it sounds like a shitty version of the riffs from Schism. Like, they're using the same sound effect, the same like distortion as Schism, but the riff is nowhere near as memorable. It's not memorable at all, in fact. And so you're just kind of listening to it, and you're like, this is weird. Why would they use something that sounds so much like Schism for this riff that's not memorable? And like, they're doing that, like, all of the notes are extremely like formulated and where they're placed. It's like they really thought about how each drum hit would weave between each guitar strum and stuff like that. But it doesn't sound good. Like, they tried too hard to make no two notes fall in the same place or something. It just sounds weird and ridiculous. The like noisy tracks, the little like interludes, are not memorable at all. I'm thinking back to how amazing the interludes were on Ineba, when you have stuff like the Eggs of Satan and Message to Harry Manback. That stuff is hilarious and memorable. Nothing like that on here. The middle tracks were all just completely underwhelming and unmemorable. The big 15-minute Tempest was not interesting at all. Just, overall, the whole album felt like a generic idea of a Tool album. It was like the vague sensation of what Tool sounds like if you were asked to like describe the sound of Tool without humming anything. If it was like, tell me how would you create a Tool song with no melodies in it? None of the parts that grabbed you, none of the parts that stay in your head, nothing that would actually start playing in your head when the band Tool was mentioned. This is what it would be like if none of that was there. So, yeah, I would say overall, I'm not surprised by this turn of events. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of 10,000 Days. I liked it more when it came out. I didn't like it as much over time, but at least that album by no means sounded like a generic version of Tool. It sounded like highly experimental. It sounded very different. It was its own thing. This album sounds like elements of 10,000 Days and elements um, of Lateralis, particularly. Those two albums for the most part, and then like little bits of some of their sound from before that, but mostly just those two. And in spite of all the songs being long as shit, none of them has any interesting ideas. So, yeah. Overall, not good.